Breaking reports confirm a major airborne attack in the southern Caribbean, and the details are more serious than anyone expected. At 4:32 p.m., a UPS MD-11 cargo jet lifted off from San Juan with more than $70 million in medical supplies and electronics, moving along a route that crews had flown hundreds of times before. Nothing in the sky looked unusual, and no alerts hinted that someone on the ground was tracking the aircraft through a hidden device planted inside it. As the jet crossed the edge of the Venezuela flight zone, 5 Eagle missiles launched from a hillside and rose fast. 2 of them struck the fuselage at 13,800 feet, ripping the plane apart and sending debris across the jungle below. Navy radar operators picked up a sharp thermal flash, matching the blast of nearly 2 tons of TNT. Analysts quickly agreed this was not a mechanical failure, but a deliberate strike meant to test American resolve. What the attackers did not realize was how fast the United States would move after a hit like this. If you want to follow what happens next, make sure to subscribe so you stay with us through the full story. The attack on the cargo jet mattered far beyond the wreckage scattered across the jungle. It took place in one of the most sensitive stretches of the Caribbean, a region watched around the clock by American sensors because it connects commercial routes, military lanes, and major shipping paths. Any strike here is not just an isolated event. It affects everything that moves through this airspace, from passenger jets to humanitarian shipments. The fact that the plane was hit right as it crossed the edge of the Venezuela flight zone raised even more concern, because this was an area where military activity had quietly increased during the last year. From a tactical point of view, the attack showed planning that normal cartel groups do not have. Someone placed a tracking device inside the cargo jet long before takeoff, which means the attackers had access to the aircraft at a secure location. They also fired 5 Eagle missiles at almost the exact moment the jet reached its climb profile. That timing alone shows they were watching the aircraft in real time, and it suggests they had help from people who understood radar habits, flight schedules, and the wider picture of the region. For the United States, this incident carried a deeper meaning, because the target was not a military asset but a civilian cargo plane moving medical supplies. That made the stakes even higher. If a group can knock a jet out of the sky without any warning, then every aircraft flying through this corridor becomes vulnerable. The crews who monitor this region know this reality better than anyone. When they look at a radar screen, they are not just tracking machines, they are tracking people. A single alert can mean lives lost, families waiting for answers, and an entire region pushed closer to instability. Politically, the strike added pressure because the explosion happened in a zone where several countries overlap interests. Any hit here forces Washington to respond, not only to protect American citizens, but to prevent other state-linked actors from thinking they can push boundaries without consequences. The United States cannot allow an attack like this to become a routine threat. If it did, the entire Caribbean air network could collapse into uncertainty. That is why this moment became more than a crash investigation. It became a test of how fast America could restore order after a direct challenge, and how far someone was willing to go to disrupt the region. The first signs of the attack appeared less than a minute after the cargo jet vanished. On a Navy destroyer guarding the southern corridor, radar crews spotted a sudden thermal spike far above normal flight levels. The heat signature matched nearly 2 tons of TNT, something no malfunction could create. Seconds later, an infrared satellite confirmed a bright flash at the jet's last altitude and detected multiple heat trails converging on the same point. It was the unmistakable pattern of a coordinated missile strike. Inside the regional command center, analysts compared every feed with radar from the fleet and sensors in Aruba. All pointed to the same location, an area tied to earlier movements of mobile launch teams. With that alignment, the system flagged the event as hostile. The debris plume sealed the conclusion, drifting in a direction that matched an external hit. No one argued what brought the aircraft down. Washington moved fast. Operation Sentinel Strike activated within minutes. On the USS William P. Lawrence, crews powered up the Mk-41 launcher and prepared 4 Tomahawk Block 5 missiles, each carrying a heavy warhead and terrain-hugging guidance. Operators held their breath in the brief pause before launch. At the same time, two CH-47F Chinooks lifted from Curaçao with 50 Navy SEALs equipped for a hard ground fight. Pilots dropped to a low flight path just a few hundred feet above the water to stay under most radar coverage. Their timing had to match the Tomahawks on impact. 21 minutes after the jet disappeared, the first Tomahawk burst from its tube and skimmed the Caribbean night while the Chinooks closed in from another direction. If the missile struck early, the defenders could scatter. If they hit late, the SEALs would fly into reorganized resistance. This was the moment where analysis ended and action took over. Press 1 if this rapid response was the right call, or press 9 if the attackers never expected America to hit back this fast. Comment your pick and subscribe to stay with us as the operation pushes forward. The strike phase began as soon as the Tomahawks crossed the coastline. Each missile followed a low path over the water before lifting just enough to clear the ridge above the enemy compound. The first warhead hit a large fuel depot near the fence, sending a wave of heat and smoke across the area. Fire spread fast, blocking several routes the defenders used to move between positions. Moments later, the second missile struck the main radio tower. The blast cut power, collapsed antennas, and left the fighters without a working communication network. With radios down, they were forced to rely on hand signals in the middle of rising smoke. The third and fourth Tomahawks struck two dirt escape trails behind the compound. These paths had been used for quick exits during smuggling runs. The explosions carved deep craters and scattered burning debris, trapping anyone who tried to flee. While the compound shook from the impacts, two CH-47F Chinooks approached from the east at about 300 feet. The pilots held a steady line as the SEAL teams prepared to descend into the fight. When the helicopters reached their window, ropes dropped, and the SEALs moved down fast, forming a perimeter before the defenders could regroup. Gunfire erupted almost immediately. The defenders opened up with heavy machine guns and rifles. The SEALs answered with controlled bursts aimed at the main firing points. The heat from the earlier explosions made the air thick and pushed smoke through the compound, but the teams advanced through it, clearing small pockets as they moved. The exchange lasted several minutes, with both sides fighting for control of the central structures. The SEALs used M141 launchers to hit fortified corners that rifles could not break. Each hit opened another route forward and weakened the remaining defenses. Speed mattered more than anything else. If the defenders managed to reorganize, the fight could turn into a drawn-out standoff. For viewers following the shift in momentum, here is your call. Press 1 if the timing of this push impressed you, or press 9 if you think the defenders never expected the SEALs to hit this fast. Comment your pick and subscribe to stay with us as the battle reaches its most intense point. As the gunfire slowed, the SEAL teams pushed deeper into the compound and began clearing the inner rooms. This was the moment when the real twist surfaced. Inside a small bunker near the center of the complex, operators found several electronic units still warm from recent use. At first glance, they looked like ordinary communication tools, but a closer check revealed something far more serious. The devices were signal jammers, and their frequencies matched the interference recorded near the cargo jet only minutes before it was hit. This detail changed everything. It proved the group on the ground did more than fire missiles. They had tried to blind the jet before the strike. Then a second twist came from the far side of the compound. In a storage room covered in dust and broken concrete, SEALs found 11 crates filled with stolen American technology. Several crates held encrypted microchips used in advanced radar systems, parts rarely seen outside military facilities. Finding them here suggested a larger network was at work, one with access and training far beyond what a normal criminal group would possess. The final twist arrived when investigators recovered fragments of the Igla launch tubes buried under debris. The serial markings linked them to a batch that passed through several countries and tied directly to an account connected to a Venezuelan military officer. The money trail raised questions that the battlefield alone could not answer. It suggested the attack had support from someone with official access, turning a regional threat into an international issue. For the SEALs on the ground, this new information meant the fight was no longer just about clearing a compound. It was about uncovering who enabled the strike in the first place. For viewers following the story, here is your call. Press 1 if you think these clues prove outside support, or press 9 if you believe an even deeper layer is still hidden. Comment your pick and stay with us as the operation moves toward its climax. The final phase began as the last outer defenses fell apart. With the fuel depot still burning and the radio tower destroyed, the defenders were trapped in the central courtyard. The SEAL teams advanced through smoke and broken concrete left by the Tomahawk strikes. Gunfire echoed as the remaining fighters tried to hold their ground, but most of their cover was already damaged. Each time they fired, the weakened walls around them crumbled, exposing their positions. One SEAL element came under fire from a bunker that had survived the first hit. Its reinforced front slowed the advance, forcing the team to call for an M141 launcher. The round blasted open the wall, sending debris across the courtyard and forcing the fighters inside to fall back. That break opened a path toward the storage wing, where several defenders were trying to regroup. The most intense moment came near the center of the compound, where fighters made a final stand behind an overturned truck. The firefight was fast and loud. Tracer rounds cut through the haze while the SEALs moved in tight formation, firing short bursts that pushed the defenders back step by step. When the last fighter dropped his weapon, the courtyard finally went quiet, except for the low crackle of flames from the fuel depot. With resistance collapsing, the SEALs split into small teams to clear the remaining structures. They moved quickly, checking rooms and securing any surviving materials. Inside one office, they found burned documents and damaged equipment. Another room held maps marked with the same launch points recorded earlier. Everything pointed to a planned, organized strike, not a random act. By the time the last building was cleared, the compound was under American control. 12 fighters were dead, 25 captured, and no SEALs were lost. The speed and precision of the combined air and ground assault prevented the defenders from regrouping, bringing the operation to its most decisive moment. For viewers following this climax, here is your call. Press 1 if this assault showed the full strength of America's response, or press 9 if you believe the biggest shock is still waiting in the aftermath. Comment your pick and subscribe as we move into the final phase. When the final rooms were cleared and the gunfire ended, the scale of the operation became clear. The compound was damaged from end to end, with smoke drifting from the fuel depot and broken concrete scattered across the yard. What the SEAL teams found inside changed the mission from a simple strike into a major intelligence breakthrough. 3 weapons storage sites had been destroyed, wiping out equipment worth tens of millions of dollars. These stockpiles had supplied the network for months, and losing them cut off one of its biggest sources of power. Investigators then moved on to the digital and financial material recovered in the compound. They identified 12 money routes that moved cash across several countries to fund training and procurement. Closing these routes weakened the network more than any single strike, because it shut down the system that helped them rebuild after earlier losses. Analysts later said this financial hit was one of the most important outcomes of the entire mission. Once the evidence was reviewed, Washington acted quickly. The United States sanctioned 3 Venezuelan defense officials linked to the serial numbers and transfers found in the recovered documents. Their accounts were frozen, and their access to the global banking system was cut. At the same time, the United States expanded surveillance over 2 naval facilities along the northern coastline, using drones to watch activity throughout the day and night. The footage offered a clearer picture of movements that had raised concern long before the cargo jet was hit. Regional partners were briefed as well. Several countries agreed to increase cooperation on tracking suspicious shipments moving across the Caribbean. The strike on the cargo jet had shown how a single launch could disrupt commercial routes and threaten civilian aircraft. Preventing another incident became a shared priority for governments across the region. Strategically, Operation Sentinel Strike carried a larger message. It proved that even a low-cost missile in the wrong hands could force a rapid American response. It also showed how quickly a small network could grow into a wider threat when backed by outside support. For the teams involved, the conclusion was simple. This attack was planned, supplied, and protected by more than just local fighters. And one question now hangs over everything. If this strike was only a test, what happens when the next group decides to push even further? For viewers following this story, here is your call. Press 1 if you think a wider confrontation is coming, or press 9 if the next move will happen quietly behind the scenes. Comment your pick and subscribe to stay with us as new developments unfold.